United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And to review our mission is to prepare and support all students within a culture of excellence to do their best and to be their best, so that each can be a successful contributing citizen, able to adapt to change and to successfully respond to the future. And our first order of business is public participation, and we do have some guests tonight, and when we do, I do review that policy, so I will just read from that. First, I want to say welcome, and I want to say thank you for joining us. And our policy says that the public is cordially invited to attend and participate in board meetings as provided in the RSU 16 Public Participation Policy. The chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin to speak. And I also ask it, if you do want to, that you come up by the microphone by Steve. No complaints or allegations will be allowed concerning any person employed by RSU 16. All speakers are to address the chair. Members of the board and superintendent may ask questions which must be addressed through the chair. The intent of the policy is to allow a fair and adequate opportunity for the public to be heard while ensuring that the time allowed does not interfere with the fulfillment of the agenda. And our policy does allow for comment on specific items during the meeting at the discretion of the board chair. So this evening, we have invited our town officials here to discuss with us the cost share presentation. So we will have, if somebody would like to participate in that, you can do that during that part of the agenda. So you don't need to do that now. But if there are comments and public that would like to participate on other topics, I would ask you to do that now. So is there anybody that would like to speak? Okay, if you could come up to...
Mary, was that for the bus garage as well?
Yep, if you would like to come up and speak to that issue now, you may.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Robinson. I'm a Board of Selectmen member from the town of Poland. I wanted to talk this evening. I know that it's over the last few months it's come up. It's been brought to my attention that each and every one of you are aware of the discussions that were brought forth to the Board of Selectmen in January. So I was chairman of the Board of Selectmen at that time. And it was brought to my attention through our town manager at that time that the RSU wanted to come and discuss some things and items which we certainly welcome at any point in time. But during that, it basically became an item of 4 different items, basically stating to us that pretty much quote, Poland, you're basically messing up Mechanic Falls and Minot because you're inappropriately charging those communities. So, in fact, there was 4 different items in that meeting in January. One was to do with the bus bay, of which the RSU pays $800 a month, $9,600 a year for the operational costs of the facility. It was felt as it was approached to us that it was for rent, and it's not rent. It fundamentally is operational costs. And we went through, in a workshop that we held with the superintendent and others that we did on February 17th as a follow-up to that January meeting, and we lined out that thing and broke down how between the heat, the insurances, the et cetera, that it was all operational costs. It wouldn't matter if the RSU had the single bay and there was nothing and they had to heat it and they had to do, they would pay the $800 a month. So it's not rent. That bay was a bay that if you go and look at the reorganization plan that was filed with the state. That was a bay that was added on as part of the expansions that we had that was done to do bus maintenance at that time under Union 29 in 2004. So those $800 was operational costs. That was question number one. Why do we pay the rent when we're paying for the bond payments for that garage? The reality is you're not paying rent, you're just paying for what it actually costs you to be in that space and to do that. It's operational costs. Secondly, of which, by the way, unfortunately, we wrote a letter back from the workshop of that on the 19th of April and signed it as a Board of Selectmen and went down through the things in public participation, but apparently that didn't get to the superintendent until September timeframe. Number two was in regards to the refinancing the existing shared bond. When the town of Poland took out the bond for the whole project to include what is now the RSU office and all of that and the whole bond for that, when we took out that bond, Union 29 essentially was like a department of the town of Poland, okay? Mine at Mechanic Falls, you paid a fee that was the state average cost per student to the Union 29, but essentially Union 29 was like a department in the town of Poland, just like a fire department, just like the Public Works Department. It was handled on its own budgetary merits in doing at the time that it was a union. Okay, it was under Poland and under the town of Poland in that respect. Had its own board of directors, had its own operational things, just like our library had its own board of directors. Okay, so that worked out. And the reality is that after that bond was issued, there was some savings given to that bond that was brought to our attention. And so we agreed and calculated up that it was $4,495, of which we returned back to the RSU. And that was over the 7-year period from the RSU of 2019 through 2009, excuse me, to 2016. And the bond payment was reduced by $977.85, leaving a balance of $3,517. Furthermore, the Board of Selectmen, based upon a cost-sharing formula, we pointed out, geez, should $4,495 of that come back to the town of Poland, because that's where the money's originating from. But just kind of a side note, didn't officially ask for that, but just kind of made the point that the reality is that, the RSU money in taxation money is about 66% Poland. So if you go and you break down the things, there's dollars to that. So there was the whole amortization and the return, things of that. And then the final item was we had no knowledge of any written evidence, and we had done our searches to that there was anything about that bus garage that was the ownership of the RSU. Okay, it was a transfer, again, by the reorganization document. It was written in here as a transfer that we transferred Minot School, we transferred Mechanic Falls Elementary School, we transferred Poland School, we transferred this building in the middle school, we transferred the RSU building to the RSU 16 when it was created in 2009. And during that time, it was also stated in here that all of the bonds and all of the debts would be transferred over from Union 29 to RSU 16 in which that's what's happened with that bus garage extension, okay? So the property and the deed of that bus garage, you can't deed out the property underneath that on the ground, and you can't deed out the fourth bay of four bays of a garage and say, okay, you own this, okay? I mean, you can't fundamentally do that. There is no deed. The only deed for that property is the deed for the town of Poland. So the superintendent gave us a FOAA request that we received on October 24th from the lawyer, William Stockmeyer of Drummond Woobsons. Okay, and so we're going through that FOAA process and have no problem in doing that or whatever. I just feel as one member of the Board of Selectmen and one member of the things that there's no way that it ever should have to ever become to this. Okay, no way. All right, there's no reason the superintendent can't call the town manager and say, geez, where's the follow-up thing, and didn't get the letter from April 19th to September timeframe. Okay, it wasn't done. You know, and I'll put the blame back on, and our town managers heard it from the board. We put the blame back on the other way. Follow up, do the things. But there's no way that we should be spending taxpayer money to go pay a lawyer to go request, FOAA request, to go get copies of deeds from the town of Poland, and spend the resources and time and dollars of that. That, to me, is very, very wasteful, okay, in the wrong areas. I have no problem, and to the members, which is many of them here tonight, okay, town of Poland has no problem with making sure it's open kimono and doing the things. But as a town and as a Board of Selectmen, and I was on the board at the time of 2009, okay, there was nothing about the RSU conversion that was done by any town people, okay? There was a committee formed, all the things done, all the lawyers, all the accountants, all the things, okay, filed by Dennis Duquette. Colleen Quint was the chair of the conversion things here in reference to the things, okay? All of that was done and taken to the townspeople as an independent process. It was never brought before the town, the Board of Selectmen in the town of Poland to say, do we like this? Do we agree with it? Does it make sense? Okay? It was brought before the people of our three communities to agree upon the RSU agreement. Okay? And it's very clear in here, and if you go back to, you know, when it was Union 29, that it was the three-member school administrative unit at that time shall collectively contribute $250,000 towards the PWG project. That's the $250,000 bond, okay? And that was dated at 15th of June, 2004. Okay, so that was an agreement, part of the ownership and part of the things came out of that money and handled in that way. Okay? Because the school things always had to be handled separately, right? Because you've got to report it all to the state, you've got to deal with all of that to the state. So I just want to make the point that we'll get it figured out and we'll get it doing, but there's nothing about the town of Poland that's standing in the way of being open, being the things, and establishing that thing to be right. But there's nothing that should have occurred that ever should have brought it to a lawyer and getting an FOAA request and then spending all the times and resources that we're going to do. The deeds are in the county seat. Anybody in the RSU organization or anybody else can go pull the deeds of all the properties. They're at the county seat right there in Auburn. Okay? And now this FOAA request says, okay, go have a Poland employee go over there and go get those receipts and go get that and go provide the RSU copies of it.
Okay, thank
Among
you,
other
Mr.
things.
Robinson, for your
Thank you.
comment. Moving on our agenda, we have recognitions and acknowledgements, and we'd like to start with some congratulations, and we have some students that would like to join us for that, if you could come up. And our staff member, Sev. Could you hold that up for us so we could read it? It says, Good Sportsmanship Award for field hockey. And would you, girls like to say something about it, or your coaches?
Yeah, I'm Morgan Brusso, and we're the captains of the past season. And we just think that this was a huge honor because we've always played with class, and that's what our coaches teach us. So it was nice to be recognized, and it kind of just shows what PRHS is all about. So thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here tonight. And would you ladies like to say something?
So the camera can pick up the...
Yes, turn right around so the camera can, come this way. There. Yeah. Good idea. Thank you. And would our coaches like to say something about your season?
Yeah, it's a great process. It was unexpected. I mean, we know that we have great girls on our team. There's 35 girls on our team, and for when we decided, because we get to vote for other teams to win a sportsmanship award. So for us to be able to, microphone. So for us to be able to earn that was just a satisfaction for the girls to know that they always play with their heads up high, and that the actually being a good sport is more important than the winning part. And it was good to have both this year, being able to have winning team and to make playoffs, but also to have really great girls in the team. And that contributes to our whole entire community and to our 4 captains over there and their family members too. So thank you.
Can you explain how they get that award?
Sure. So at the end of the season, the coaches in the league are invited to vote for 3 teams, up to 3 teams that they believe exemplify the sportsmanship qualities. And so you submit those through your athletic director, and then they go to the MPA, and then the MPA tallies them up, and PRHS came out on top this year. So that was exciting for us. And then we traveled down. Mr. King was nice and got us a bus, and we traveled down to the state games, which was a treat for us to be able to watch state championship field hockey, to begin with as a whole entire team in the rain. And then at halftime of the Class B game, we went out on the field and was awarded the banner.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight, and congratulations. And that was also an award that was given to our boys soccer team. So we have a lot to be proud of. And also, congratulations to the cross-country state meet qualifiers, Olivia Ouellette and Samantha Holmes. In a field of 103, Olivia finished 27th, that in 20 minutes, 23 seconds, and Samantha was close behind in 32nd place with 20:34. So congratulations to them. Also, there was lots of fun to be had at the Tri-Town Family 5K with 241 people participating. I did, Ed did, Tina did. It was a great day. Diane did. So it was a great day. And so thank you to Mr. Vincent and to the Whittier staff. That was a lot of work. And also want to congratulate Sierra Gary and Sigrid Sibley, who represented Poland Regional High School Knights at the New England Choral Festival, and also their teacher, Julia Edwards, and that was in Rochester, New Hampshire. So congratulations to them. And congratulations to Lisa Powell. Lisa was the Optimist Club Student of the Month, and she is a 6th grader at Poland Community School. So we have lots to be proud of. Moving on, our agenda adjustments. There's no adjustments in our agenda that I'm aware of. We have 2 presentations, and the first one is a response that I would like to make. I think it's important for us to take a few minutes to respond to the Lewiston Sun Journal article on November 2nd regarding the discussion at the Poland Selectmen's meeting about the bus bay at the Poland Town Garage. Since that article, as RSU 16 board chair, I have collaborated with Superintendent Meserve on an editorial response, which was published on November 7th. I have spoken with Poland's Board of Selectmen Chair, Walter Gallagher, and I did watch the tape of the meeting. And several comments I'd like to share. First, for the visitors that are here this evening and viewers at home, the RSU 16 School Board is fully aware of the steps that are being taken related to the bus bay at the Poland Town Garage. The board has worked closely with the superintendent on the issue, and the RSU superintendent's actions and reactions have been supported by this board. And secondly, I want to say that we are committed to working with the town of Poland to resolve that issue. I'd also like to address 2 questions that have been raised repeatedly in the last several weeks. One is a fairly simple question with kind of a complicated answer, but what does RSU 16 want? What we want is to see if we have any property or ownership rights to the bus bay at the Poland Town Garage. The Poland School Department paid a bond for the bus bay from 2005 to 2009, and RSU 16, Poland, Minot, and Mechanic Falls, have paid on that bond since 2009. At the end of this 20-year bond, the three towns, including Poland, will have paid over $268,000 for the bus bay. The RSU is also paying $9,600 a year for operational costs. The RSU wants the question of ownership resolved, and we want to have an opportunity to discuss the amount that's being assessed as an operational cost. It is a complicated issue. We have reviewed the deeds in our possession, and we have requested the advice and the support from our attorney, which did result in the freedom of access request. The next question was, how do our two boards come together to resolve this issue? At the last Selectmen's meeting, which I watched, it was suggested that it be done board to board. We have expressed a willingness to do that in the past, and we continue to see that as the best alternative. It is the how that may be more difficult. We have a 15-member board, which requires that the work be delegated to representative committees. All decision-making is done by the full board, but our initial work is often done by committees. It would seem that a representative group, including the superintendent and the town manager, from both boards would facilitate communication and be an important step to resolving this issue. Finally, I think it's important for everyone here today and those that are viewing at home to understand that I believe that it is the intent of both boards to represent our communities well. I think we're both trying to do what our communities would want us to. For the Poland Selectmen, that means Poland taxpayers, but for RSU 16, it is Poland, Minot, and Mechanic Falls taxpayers. We serve our constituents well when we work to find common ground and resolution. The RSU 16 board looks forward to working with the Poland Selectmen to find a solution that represents the interests of all. And with that, I would like to thank our town leaders and for being here, and we will move on to our discussion of the cost share.
So I have some documents that I'm going to project. They can be small, so hard to see, and if there are people in the audience who would like copies, I brought some extra copies. I maybe can have Mary take some of those out. Also, I have some extra copies of the actual cost sharing section. Thank you. What I will do is I will point to the section I'm talking about as I go, so you can follow along up here if you can see it, but if you can't, you can kind of glance where I'm pointing to and then look at your own numbers to see them better. So the first thing I want to do with this presentation is just let the board know this is a presentation for you because you're going to have some decisions to make today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what the consolidation plan or the reorganization plan requires us to do when there's a request for us to review the cost sharing formula. And And then I'm going to go through the numbers up here that you will use to consider what is currently being done, and if there is a need for us to consider further whether this formula needs to change or be considered for change. So I think I'll start with the actual cost-sharing process, just to give you an overview of what is going to be the process today and what the process would be going forward. If you'll look at, you've all got a copy of this document. And again, this is just process, so you can follow along, you can just listen. Basically, the cost-sharing formula was set in 2009-10 when the RSU came together as a union. And the first year it was 100% set on valuation, and then it was phased in to have enrollment become part of that. The second year it was 95% valuation and 5% pupil count, and then the third year it was 90% and 10% pupil count. And this cost-sharing formula was set to stay in place for 5 years, and then be reviewed in 5 years, and then every 2 years after that. And essentially a review can be as simple as the school board saying, do we see any issues with the formula? And if the answer is no, we just keep it going until we see an issue. There doesn't have to be formal votes, but there can be, certainly, if we want to make sure the board is in full agreement or has a majority vote. And we do plan to have a vote on this today because we think it's important for the board to state in its entirety what their perspective is on the cost-sharing formula once you know all the information. When there are two ways that the cost-sharing formula can be reviewed. One is by a majority vote of the board. Your weighted votes are the way it counts, just like in every other vote that you have. And if the board decides that the formula is fair and no changes necessary, they don't see a change necessary, then it's done for you. There is a second way that the formula can be reviewed formally, and that is through a petition of voters in your town. So the cost-sharing formula review requires 10% of the number of voters voting in the last gubernatorial election. They could, if they get that many signatures on a petition, they could require the district to go through this process. If the process goes forward, there's a representative team of 9 people that will go through the process. There will be 3 people from every town. So Minot will have 2 people selected by the municipality and one of the Minot board members from this board. And that would be the same for Mechanic Falls and for Poland. So in that setting, there are 9 people, and there is not a proportional vote depending on your town. It's just there's 9 people, and they make the decision whether this is fair or not. If they decide that it needs to be changed, that representative group, and before I forget, you do have to have a state facilitator. So the school department would have to hire a facilitator from the state to oversee this process and work through this process with the 9-member committee. I know that Bethel just finished the process. That they said there's only 4 facilitators in the state, so sometimes it can take a little bit of time to get that set. And it costs approximately $1,600 for a facilitator to do that process. So if you do have the steps going forward, what would happen is that committee has to look at what the assessments were in 2009 and the enrollments in 2009 and determine if there's been any major changes that would warrant a change in the formula. So if assessments change significantly in one town or enrollment changed significantly in one town, it could warrant a look at the formula. If that 9-person committee decides that they recommend a change and they determine what that change is, then it would go back to the voters. And the voters of the 3 towns would vote in referendum whether this change takes effect or not. So it's quite a lengthy process. and has a lot of steps involved to make sure that it is thoroughly reviewed and well thought out. And that's kind of the basics of the way this process would work. Mary, is there anything you want to add that I left out?
Great.
Anybody have any questions about the way the process works?
So you talked about the two ways if the board, decides, and if we decided no, there's still that possibility of doing a vote. If we decided yes, is it still that same process
Yes.
of 9 people and stay? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to clarify.
So it has to go through, if the board decides no, and that 9-person panel, yes, it would just be moved on to the panel. You don't make any decisions about what that formula looks like or what the process will be. That all is done by that 9-person group. That would include one of you from each town. Any other questions, Ed?
So that 5-year period of the 90% valuation, 10% people count, as you mentioned, are we moving it up by this process, or are we on track? I think you said it was going to be 5 years.
Yeah, so, it's 5 years, and then after 5 years, it would be every 2 years. So officially, it would be next year that we would be officially looking at it if you start from the beginning. And you'll remember last year, we talked about it and decided that we didn't see a need for change. We just talked about it briefly during budget time. And what the board decided at that time is when it's looked at in deeper, if it's looked at deeper, they don't want it to be occurring during budget process, that it should be happening outside of that process. So it was talked about last year at the 2-year cycle, and then next year would be the next 2-year, would be when you hit that next 2-year cycle. So yes, it is a year sooner.
So last year was 5-year.
Yes, because it's
Okay.
in 2009-10.
Okay.
Yes, 15-16. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to talk to you about the cost-sharing formula. And remember, one of our tasks is to consider how the numbers have changed since 2009-10. So it's interesting because when I talked to legal counsel about this, they said, well, your formula is actually set up to adjust to local conditions anyway, because if assessments go down in 1 year, you pay less. If they go up, you pay more. If your enrollment goes down, you pay less. If it goes up, you pay more. It offsets itself. So he said it was a little bit strange that was in there anyway, but I do think because it's in there, we will want to look at the 2009-10 data and also the current data that we have. I'm going to start with the current data. So if you look up on the screen here, I just want to explain the sheet that you're seeing in front of you and a little bit about how the subsidy and the cost-sharing formula works. The first thing that I have here in this section is our student head count, because we know enrollment matters. And you can see we have Mechanic Falls, Minot, and Poland, and the number of students in each town. And our total number of students is 1689. And the next piece over you can see is what the population of those students percentages compared to the whole number. So we have 29% of the Mechanic Falls, 29% of the students are from Mechanic Falls, 23 from Minot, and 48 from Poland. Yes, Julie?
So if we have a student that's from Minot and goes to Poland, are they counted as Minot or Poland?
Poland. It's not, so we didn't do this by, so you're talking about the superintendent's agreements?
Yes.
Right, so when we do the counts for the state, we have to record where, I believe, where they reside. So we have an internal superintendent's agreement. I don't think, I'd have to look at that. That is a good question. I mean, look, I think it's where they're residing. I don't think it's, because we get a certain percentage we get a certain amount of money based on where they reside.
Okay.
That's how our subsidy works. So, but I will confirm that. I don't know if Stacy, no.
Yes, it is where they reside.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Because it wouldn't make sense otherwise, because you wouldn't want to have people moving to a place that costs less, that you get less subsidy for within your system. So the next column that you're going to see is the total state subsidy that we receive. And you'll see we get over $3 million from Mechanic Falls, over 2,000 from Minot, and just a little over 4,000 from Poland. Million, sorry, thank you. I'm not used to dealing with such big numbers and budgets, for a total of $10,630,000 in state subsidy. Now, the Poland money also has our high school in it, which is backed out. That's totally paid for by the state, so we need to subtract that to look at the actual net subsidy, and that is this next line over. So $9,722,000. When you consider how much money we get by town and you divide it by the enrollment, what you'll find is the state gives us a lot more money for our Mechanic Falls students than it does our other students. So the state's actually given us $8,020 for every Mechanic Falls student in the district. They give us $6,798 for every Minot student, and they give us $3,916 for every Poland student. The reason they do that is their subsidy, the state subsidy, is based on assessment. And so they subsidize the poor communities more than they do the more affluent communities. And,
And it doesn't matter whether you're an RSU or you're an SAD or you're by yourself.
right,
That's the amount that town is going to get.
Exactly.
No
So-
matter what configuration they're in.
right. So they're going to look at if you are a Georgetown and you're on the coast, they're going to evaluate your properties and they're going to say, here's how much you will get from the state. Some districts are 0% receivers, or get 1 or 2% of their costs. Other schools are 100% receivers. We're in about the 55% mark. We're not rich and we're not poor. We're pretty close to the average, or a little bit more of a receiver than the average.
And that holds true, kind of to piggyback what Julie said, if we're sending a child out of district with a superintendent's agreement or any other agreement for another public school, that's what that district is receiving for our child.
Yes, yes. So they become that school's child and they get the subsidy.
They get that
if we-
amount, not the amount that they're.
Correct. So the next column that you see here is required local funding. What the state says to the school district is, I'm going to give you this $10 million, but to get it, you have to raise a certain amount in each of your communities. So you can see in the required local funding, we don't have a say in this. The state tells each community how much they must raise. And you can see Mechanic Falls must raise $1,230,000. Minot must raise $1,485,000, and Poland must raise $5,423,000. So again, that's set based on what the state feels that town can pay, based on their assessment, and there's no negotiating that.
Right, that has nothing to do with our cost-sharing formula at all.
No, none of this is involved in the cost-sharing formula. This is all state subsidized money and required local. So again, there always comes the question of how much of this, what is the percentage of this by town? You can see the state money is 15% Mechanic Falls, they're our poorest community, 18% Minot, and 67% Poland. That's for that money, all determined by the state. The next column over, determined by RSU funding agreement, is the additional local. Now, you will remember from our budget meetings, there's central programs and services, there's a minimum amount towns must raise to provide what they consider a basic education for their school departments. And we get money for things like teachers and librarians and administration and technology. There's a range of things that the formula is quite complicated. But we get a certain amount of money for different things. And if you go above that, there's a separate warrant article, and the people in your town have to agree that they're willing to pay above that. So one of the examples is sports. We get very little money for sports. I think it's $58,000 for high school athletics. So your sports programs are mostly funded by the town. So Again, if you want to have sports programs, you usually have money above the minimum amount that is required by state law. The most efficient and successful schools, the ones that have the best student achievement, the average in the state is between 5 and 10% above the essential programs and services number. There are schools that are above 40 or 50%. And we're about that 5-6%. We're kind of on the bottom end of what they consider an efficient, well-run school department. And also, as you know, we pay below the state average. Our cost is below the state average, but we are above the state average in student achievement. So I always feel like that's kind of a good example of a effective and efficient school system, because you want to be spending enough money to get the programs that our students need, but not so much that your towns can't afford it. So the amount that our towns have agreed to pay above the essential programs and services number is $1,670,000. This is the money that goes through the cost sharing formula. So instead of it being 100% assessment, which it is for all the other money, because that's what the state uses, this has the 90% assessment, 10% student count. And you can see that changes the percents a tiny bit. Essentially, you can see Mechanic Falls has to pay a little more because they're now at 16% of that amount of money. Minot has to pay 19%, and then Poland is down 65 because, again, they have less percent of enrollment than they do the high assessment values. Does that all make sense? Any questions? So when we're talking about the cost sharing formula, this $1,670,000 is the only percent that's impacted by this decision.
Is there other decisions that impact that?
What do you mean by that?
That's 1.6 million. Is that the only money in this whole budget that's impacted?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that helped me kind of understand it is if I looked at it as a pie, and there were 20 pieces in that pie, it's only about a piece and a half that is impacted by the cost share formula. The rest of it, the state is dictating what they're gonna give us for money, and then also what we need to raise locally within our town. So it's a very small slice that's impacted by the cost share.
Wow.
So,
One of the problems with it, it takes incentive to whatever degree, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but a good example, Poland has spent millions of dollars bringing in utilities, water, natural gas, and sewer in the other end of town, with the anticipation of bringing in more businesses, which will bring more tax revenue. It brings our values up. Poland will be growing, and we'll be paying yet a bigger percentage, and they're devaluing Minot and Mechanic Falls. So it takes a lot of the incentive away, which is just a reverse of the more you want to bring businesses to town.
Yeah, but aren't Poland's taxes, they pay less money. I mean, my taxes in Mechanic Falls, I pay more for my $175,000 house than a Poland resident pays for their $175,000. By a lot, isn't it?
yeah,
It
it's
isn't
pretty,
the residents,
yes,
if it keeps going up, it
yeah, actually it
to some
is.
degree would drive a business away, saying, why do I want to go there if the tax is going to continue to go up?
They're gonna go away for, what the heck, $1 million, it's,
I'm saying, this is basically what we're hearing from people.
no. Moving right along.
So I do want to respond to Norm and to Missy, because you're right, Missy. What's ended up happening is when we talked about this at my meeting with the town administrators, when you have a lot of businesses, what it means is your typical resident, your homeowner, has the lowest taxes because the businesses are paying those taxes for you. It's like I live in Livermore and across the river in Jay, which is not quite a deal anymore with the closings of the machines. But my taxes are over 2 times the amount as somebody several miles away for the same house because the paper industry, the business, is paying the taxes for Jay. So the schools, salaries were significantly higher in Jay compared to Livermore and all of those things because they had more money coming in, their base was better. And when you look at our costs on a $100,000 house in this district, in the 3 towns, it's the same. So in Mechanic Falls in 2016, on a cost of taxes on a $100,000 house were $1,084. In Minot, it was $1,050, and in Poland, it was $907. So you are talking a difference when it comes to the local resident who's paying taxes, and that's often the discussion, is that, well, we're paying more of the share, but you're right, it's not the local resident with a typical home that is paying that. It's the people that have the businesses or the people who have really expensive homes on lakefront property, or in towns that have oceanfront property, it's the same way for them. They're paying the lion's share of the taxes for their area.
I thought this was oceanfront property.
It might be.
Oh, God.
So you can look at this information and get a sense of, and one of the things that came up at our meeting is, essentially, Poland is paying 66% after you go through all of it, of the cost, but they're actually paying for their own students because the state is not giving them money for the same amount.
They're getting half the amount than you are for my kids in Mechanic Falls.
So the state is subsidizing Minot and Mechanic Falls students at a much greater level because the need. And one of the other things that I talk about is, it comes back to, the concept that the Equal Amendment Clause of the Constitution, that everybody deserves an education, a free and appropriate education. So you don't discriminate based on, where you live, the poor versus the rich. They want to make sure poor communities have an appropriate education, just like our wealthier communities. This is how the state puts that forward. And it's also how towns put it forward, and it's why it's 90% and 10, not, 50-50 or, only enrollment, because the philosophy out there is we need to make sure we have the appropriate education no matter what the assessment of the town is or how much money there is in a town. So that's, oops.
Tina, could you put the numbers back up, please? Oh, there it is. So it's $4,000. Yes.
Missy?
Yeah, so from what I can see, the state, 15% Mechanic Falls, 18% Minot, 67%. That's the state determination. We are so close to that in the funding formula at 16, 19, and 65. Poland's actually 2% less than what the state is saying that they can afford.
Yeah, so, exactly.
But it's so close.
Yeah, 2%, when you're talking,
$1 million.
millions of dollars, $1.5 million, a little over that, is, it's not $5, but it's certainly not a huge amount of money when you consider you're not talking about the $21 million budget that we have.
But they're actually 2% less.
Yes.
Not 2% more, they're 2% less than what the state
benefits the town that has the high assessments. That's certainly true. Steve?
I guess I'm going under the state subsidies. Minot gets $8,020.
Yeah.
I don't care about Mechanic Falls.
Well, $8,000
was say $4,000. So you take $4,000 with that 800 kids is $3.2 million difference in subsidy if they have students. So who's making that money out?
So when you look at the required local, right here, Steve, That's why they have to raise
Okay, answer that. Yeah, yeah.
$5,400,000 when
Okay.
you only have to raise $1,400,000.
Okay,
The town is making that up.
okay, fine.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Ed,
Just make sure I'm following along, maybe everybody else is.
don't ask any questions that are too hard, Ed.
No matter what, any change in a formula, no matter how creative, the state is still gonna give Poland $3,916 per student, no matter what.
Exactly. The only change is gonna be over here on this $1,000,006.
Poland's gonna have to make up that difference in the required local funding, no matter what.
Yes, no matter what. So it's only when you get to that ending additional local that we're talking about. All the rest stays the same,
Okay.
right? Tina?
So just to go back to the beginning and put this all in context, so when we were talking about timeframes.
Yeah.
So typically, we would be looking at this according to the schedule next year.
Yes.
We're looking at it this year, right now, because we were requested to do that by the town of Poland, correct?
And what I would say is, yes, it's not on cycle, but we did talk about it last year and say that we weren't going to bring it up. We weren't going to go, I didn't do this presentation with you last year because the board basically felt like it wasn't appropriate to do it in the middle of the budget season.
Right.
And they wanted to do outside. So it seemed fair to me that we would have a more formal presentation and discussion about it this year, so you would all understand the formula, and we could have that determination in a formal way.
So was there any indication on the reasoning behind now versus a couple years ago, or? Because this has been in place since 2009.
Yes. This is the first time we've been asked to review it, so we are.
Okay.
So, and what I would say is, remember at the beginning I said part of the reorganization plan, I think it's right on that first page, it says that, or on the second page, when it says the year, about a quarter of the way down, it says the year 3 cost sharing formula shall remain in effect until reviewed by the RSU board in year 5 of the RSU, 13-14. And then the formula shall be reviewed every 2 years thereafter to ensure the formula remains fair. The pupil count from year 1, 09-10, shall be used as a reference for pupil count in the review. So I do want to take you back to 09, 10, and our subsidy. You don't have this in front of you, I don't believe. Actually, I think all the board members do. Cost sharing formula.
Yes.
This is complicated. I'm not going to teach, I've done presentations on this before, but I'd like you to go to page 4. And you have another one with you that is for 2016-17 in your packet, and turn to page 4 on that as well. So what you're going to notice on page 4, I'm going to look at the 09-10 one first, this white one, is it does exactly what I was showing you before, is it has Mechanic Falls, Minot, and Poland, and it tells you how many pupils are or were here in 9-10 and how much subsidy we received for each one, and what the percentage of population they were. So you can see here Mechanic Falls at 27% of the population, Minot at 23%, and Poland had 49%. If you remember, we've been just talking about this one up here. Those numbers are almost identical with just slight 1% changes here and there. So instead of Poland being 48% of the population, they were 49% of the population. Our total student count right now is 1689. It's 1686. So when we talk about our enrollment being pretty stable, this is talking 09 to 16. It's pretty stable in those numbers. And it's also pretty stable in where those children live. There haven't been a lot of changes. The next thing that this does is, if you look at the next section down, it has your state assessments. And what it shows us in the state assessments is basically the same thing. Most of the assessments have gone down a little bit. Let me just look, I think I have a paper here that wrote this out so it'd be easier for me to follow. Most of the assessments have gone down a little bit. Mechanic Falls on The 09-10 had a $155 million assessment, and now it's $148 million. And the percent was 15.59 in 09, it's now 15.12. So you can see that that's pretty consistent. The Minot went up a little bit. They were 176 million, and they're now 178 million. And that's why their percent went from 17.69 to 18.24, because their assessment went up. So you can see how the formula is designed to fluctuate with the assessment. Poland had 666 million, and now they're at 653 million.
653?
653, yes. So they had 66.72%, and now they have 66.64%. So the changes in both enrollment and assessment have only changed minimally when you do the comparison to each town and themselves in 2009, 2016, 17. So that's the information you're supposed to be thinking about for when we're not going to do a vote right now, we're going to do it in new business. But this committee is supposed to be determining, does it seem like this cost-sharing formula is fair and distributes the cost equitably? And is it similar, are the conditions similar to 09-10? Because that's what they said you've got to be determining. And that cost-sharing formula in our reorganization plan determines that for us.
Okay, and I would ask if there's anybody out in public participation, if you would come up to the microphone if you have questions or something you'd like to share, and we would give that about 10 minutes, and then we need to move on.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
The calculated mill rate, is that statewide number?
Stacy, the mill rate's not a statewide number, it's by your local community, or?
The state comes up with a mill that each town has to pay.
Yeah.
It's usually consistent throughout the state. It's been like 8 or 4 in the past. Towns that have very little high values, pay lower, smaller because they raise so much money.
Right. Stacy, it might make sense for you to come up here for a little while in case there are questions that are financial questions.
Good evening again. It's always been my thing within the town of Poland to kind of pay close attention to the finances, and for some of you back in the school things or whatever, I was aware of and a big part of doing the things and keeping track of how we did things. And I got to give credit to the members of this board or whatever, that what used to be the third highest cost per student in the state no longer is. And as the state website says, it's $9,500 per student. And the average across the state, I believe, is $11.2 million. I have it here. $11,200 per student. So as noted, slightly under, given our communities and given the evaluation of our communities or whatever, I think we're doing a fine job. So I don't think, for me, the discussion isn't about what the school budget is and what the school dollars are. What's being asked here tonight is consider the funding formula. When the funding formula was created, it was created and built in that we'd begin introducing more of the pupil cost into it, because I think the people at that time thought that that was an appropriate thing to do. And then it said at the 5th year point, we'd reevaluate that. We didn't. In 13-14, we didn't reevaluate that. And then it said it would reevaluate it every 2 years since. We've actually missed that mark. So that is why the town of Poland formally made the request to have this looked at and reviewed, because we feel that that's important. And as Tina did a great job in presenting the numbers, so much of the school budget is based upon how the state does the evaluation, is based upon the evaluation of the town. That's it, okay? There's the $1.67 million that she showed. I also believe one item that you slightly missed is the item under And I got the sheet here, under the CIPs. What you don't show. Thank you. Okay, under your budget formula details that you put out, there's the state formula, doing the things, the 1.6 million, and then down here, there's $258,000 that's raised for, that's got the CIP, technology, and adult ed, okay? And those also are figured into what is actually part of the tax bill that goes to, and those are paid by local funding in doing. Those are not part of the state subsidy numbers. Okay.
And those go through a separate warrant article and have to be approved by the voters separately, and that's part of that process.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's consistent. I'm just saying it's consistent, too. So my only point is that the 1.67 million is actually 1.9 million, okay? When you get into the thing and do, it's actually 1.9 million.
With the CIP and the...
Stacy, do you want to...
Just showing the general fund.
Right. Okay, so I worked up the details in a nice little spreadsheet just to understand, and I've got the 90-10 formulas applying to both and how it all calculates down, and it all figures out very nicely to the taxation bill. So at the bottom of this, as noted, Mechanic Falls raises by total assessment in taxation 1.548 million, Minot 1.846 million, and Poland 6.673 million. So when you see the 5.4, then the 1.0, that's 6.5, then you need to, that's 6.5 that's on the far right over the thing, but then you have to actually add in the CIP number into the calculation against the 258,000, and that's another 154,000 for Poland, that's another 42,000 for Minot, and another 35,000 for Mechanic Falls. Okay, so in the actual tax bill that the three towns get, okay, is all of that summed together, okay? And so that actual tax bill that all the towns get, totaling $10.067 million, almost $0.068 million, it figures out, if you take the per pupil cost, it figures out that in taxation of the three towns, okay, Mechanic Falls pays $3,218 per student. That for the 1.548 million for 481 students, that's $3,218 per student that they're paying in actual taxation things from the people that live in that community and pay their taxes in that community. For Minot, it's $4,698. And for the people in Poland, it's $8,198.
Because you get so much less from the state.
Understood. You get less from the state in the taxation, okay? But again, if you look at the thing, and I think you guys pointed out there was like a 2%, it actually figures slightly under 2%. If you take that 1.9 million and then you say it's 90% evaluation, okay? So it's the same formula the state uses, so 67%, 18 and 15% respectively. And then you say, okay, against 10% of that 1.9 million, so against $190,000 of that bill, we're going to apply pupil cost to that. And the pupil cost is 48% Poland, 23% Minot, 28% Mechanic Falls. So it's that 10% of that 1.9 million that actually where that funding formula takes effect. And in the actual detailed dollars, because I worked that out in doing the things, it comes down to a shifting of $35,000 from Poland to $9,691 to Minot, and $25,812 to Mechanic Falls. Okay, and that's because of pupil count and the state formula combined, 90%, 10%. Okay, so we're talking about affecting $35,000 on a $20.8 million budget. Okay, my point, and the thing that I would urge you folks to take a look at is I would urge you to take a look at this. I think it would be real good for the three towns to get together. There's been a lot of years that have gone by since the IRSHA was formed. I think it's prudent that just like you tells me in the three-town thing, that you look at it from the three-town perspective and do. Yes, it's all about the evaluation hasn't changed. Yes, the population of the students hasn't changed. But I would say, you got, instead of a $16.6 million budget, you now have a $20.8 million budget. So at the end of the day, it's not the same to the taxpayers in all the communities, okay? And I think I exhibited that in over $8,000 for Poland, in over $4,600 for Minot in doing. So I think it's imperative that we look at that because it's such a small percent of the overall budget, the $1.9 million to the $20.8 million, that's even can get applied to the funding formula. I think it's critical to do that. And again, as you noted, there were about 55 or 56% from the state is subsidized. If you go to the state website, it's a pretty nice website to go look at. You can see every school department in the state and what their formula is, okay? And there are dozens of communities that have a formula that is 70-30, 60-40, 50-50, okay? There's dozens of them. There's also many communities that strictly use an evaluation. There are a number of communities that use a 90-10. There are communities that use an 80-20. Every one of them is worked out here. Oxford Hills uses 75-25. They are the closest communities surrounding us that's actually a shared formula. Auburn's not a shared formula. Wyndham's not a shared formula. Okay, so it's a whole different ballgame with them. If you look at the closest community to us within the state, it's SAD 17, and they're 75-25. They have 9 communities in there doing things, and it breaks down. So, you know, there is a lot of example of things changing and changing over time.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So based on all the numbers we've heard and thrown around in equations, you're a member of Poland, what is it exactly you would like us to do? Shift that $35,000? Is that what you're like?
No, I'm saying today that is shifted. All I'm saying is I'm encouraging that the 9 people to get together as the Tina worked out the process and that you go through the process. I think it is not responsible in all the years of doing things and not going through the process, okay? You know, which of these communities have been reevaluated to the times? Which of these communities have 100% evaluation in their communities and is taxation against 100% evaluation? Which of the communities have different evaluation costs? I mean, I know that when I pay my tax bill in the town of Poland, more than 60% of my tax bill is actually for the RSU, okay? So, you know, to exclaim that, you know, we're the only ones that's got a high tax bill, you know, it all is. It's the reality of life. I'm not changing it, saying it shouldn't change. I'm just advocating that you take a vote to say, yes, I want to go form the committee, and let them go look at it. You know, I can have my personal opinion, but I'm not going to be here to advocate my personal opinion of dissent. I just like to have it done.
We have just a few minutes left for public participation. Just a minute. Hang on, Steve. Is there anybody else that would like to participate?
I got one statement. Over 60% of my tax bill goes to education too. So.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I completely understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate all the work you put into this. But I kind of feel like you beat around the bush a little bit answering Aaron's question as far as, and I don't want to get personal with, you know, what your personal agenda is with this, but I understand and see the need for everybody to kind of get together and discuss this. But as an ultimate goal for you, as a taxpayer in Poland and as a representative for Poland, what do you want to see be done out of this, you know, out of this 9 people getting together? I mean, what's the ultimate goal that you want to see?
I mean, as we've pointed out, 85-90% of the total budget is determined by evaluation of the communities. That is what that is. All the communities manage their evaluation, manage what they're trying to do in the development and whatever. The only thing I will say is the reason Poland's evaluation went down since 2009 is that the state decided that we don't get to do better Betty anymore. So when we have a Poland Spring water in our town, we don't get the same taxes, and we can't collect the same taxes that we used to be able to from any corporation or businesses for their personal properties, okay? We lost all that evaluation due to no fault of anybody in the town of Poland or anybody on the Board of Selectmen making a decision that is there. And nothing changed about the businesses went away, okay? There wasn't businesses that closed. We lost it. That's the evaluation that was lost. And all of that shifts 100% to the taxpayers of Poland to make up the difference.
Okay, and I think we have somebody else that wanted to participate.
To finally answer your question, when or if the middle school is ever expanded here, it's going to be done on our share and our local share, okay? And it will be added to that $1.9 million. It will be 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 every year, whatever that number is going to be, okay? And I don't feel, frankly, that the town of Poland should be having to foot the bill for that, when in reality, if you look at the history of time, the town of Poland built everything that was here, okay? And the expansion is because we've got a different student population spread out across the communities that's driving it and putting the middle school together. So I think when it comes to that added 10% of the budget lines, we should be more strictly based upon pupil counts and be fair within the fairness that we can have between our three communities, and it's that. I mean, I don't change the evaluations. Poland has a lot of lakefront, a lot of shorefront.
Thank you, Steve. I think Stan had something he wanted to say, and we're already a few minutes over, so another couple of minutes, and then we need to move on.
Well, Steve did touch on a couple of things. I had Stan Tetman, Poland Select Board. First question, Tina, if you could just explain again about the debt service, the $908,000, why does that just come out of Poland and it's not?
I'm going to let Stacy speak to this for you. Stacy, come close to the microphone, just stand maybe behind.
There's a mic right there. They can get you.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
That amount of money is for this building. This building was built with 100% state participation. It was also a private and special law, which Poland is very lucky for, because when EPS went into effect, all debt service was rolled into EPS, which means you don't get your money anymore at 100%. I went through this for Jay. I worked for RSU 73, which was the town of Jay, Livermore, and Livermore Falls. The town of Jay gets $237,000 a year for subsidy from the state. That is it. And they built their middle school with state participation. But because the debt service was rolled into EPS, they no longer got the funding for their school. I am a Poland resident, and yes, Poland built this school, but the state pays for it. And because it was a special law, we continue to get 100% of the debt service for this building from the state, and we will until that debt service is paid in full. That amount of money, we broke it out, because once this building is paid for, we will no longer get that $908,000 that's on that list. It will go away. And so we can't count that towards the amount of money that Poland gets for the state, because it's only for this debt service. That money in turn gets sent to the bond bank each year for the payment, so we cannot use it to subsidize the school budget.
Thank you.
The other just quick points that I wanted to make that Steve did mention at the end, that if the expansion does go through, I had figured out that if there was a $6 million bond, if it was 20 years, 3%, it's going to add about $380,000 a year entirely to that $1.67 million. If you add in the CIP, now we've just added about $600,000 to that line. So that becomes more money. It's going to be over $2 million that we're going to be looking at sharing. My main concern is in talking with residents, they're not happy about the fact that if we do that, and Steve alluded to this, that we, members of Poland, residents of Poland, are going to be picking up 2/3 of that. And Steve said we've only got 50% of the students. And I think if nothing else, I know that some people here, just don't see any reason to change the formula, but I think if you don't at least go through the process and give it a fair hearing, you may not be getting an addition. And I think if you want to be fair, I think you have to do it. It's been 5 years. It's time to at least look at it. If nothing changes, it doesn't change, but I think that you have to give a fair hearing. If not, I think we're going to run into serious problems, because I know I'll be one person saying that I would not support it.
Is there anybody in the public from Mechanic Falls or Minot that would like to speak? Okay, Annette?
Could you tell me, you know, if we don't get this?
I'll tell you one thing, I think the mic system is horrible.
It's only for the TV.
No, it's not for us.
Can't hear a thing.
It's only for the TV.
There is no mic.
Well, I respect your position, but my question to you is, as a Poland Town, you know, representative, as a selectman, you're saying that, you know, if we get this middle school edition, if we get this, if we get that, if we don't get it, what are we gonna do with our students? Where are we gonna put them?
Well, and I'll
You know,
respond.
and it's, I understand our perspective of it, I understand where you're standing on it, but I really feel like I understand everybody's position on money, I understand that, I know we all pay taxes, we are all vested in it, but it really kills me because we're arguing over money, and we have all we can do to provide our kids with what they get now. We have all we can do to keep teachers, because we are one of the lowest paying districts in our region. But we're spending too much money. I understand nobody outside of the school department agrees on how the money is being spent. It's never been agreed upon between the school board and the selectmen, and any of the three towns. I've never heard but a handful of good comments on how the communication has been between our board and the three towns. It's always been bad. And that's put on the backs of all of us and all of you, that somehow we have to get together, we have to make this fair, and it goes beyond the money. I understand why the money is so important, but as a parent with 4 children in the school department, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting that it comes down to an argument over a 3 or 2% or 200,000 or even 2 million, that so much discontent goes into this, and I'm not going to say it wastes our board's time or the town's time, but it's really disheartening. It's extremely disheartening. And I really, really wish that at some point in the 9 years that I've been on the board, 7 years, excuse me, that we get to a point where it doesn't constantly feel like a competition, a back and forth. And I don't know what I can do as a townsperson. I've lived in this town since the day I was born. But when somebody knows that you're on the school board, it's an automatic, like, discard.
Get the plague, get
I think Tina had something she'd
Well, I
like
was
to
just going to
add.
say, I think it's kind of like 2 different issues here, and I think talking about the addition is a little bit of a stretch, because we're not there yet, we're just
It's almost a
investigating
threat.
it.
That's kind of how it feels.
Right, and so that, back to my original question, like what's sort of driving this, I now have my answer.
Right.
It's because why this rose to the top is quite clear. It's because of the prospect of looking at the addition and what that's going to mean for future development within Poland and the cost. I mean, that's why we're here, so that's pretty
That
clear.
is correct, and I am the one that was on the board that originally asked for this.
Yeah, so thank you for clarifying that.
Aaron?
Excuse me, I just want to make a point that I'm not opposed to education. My wife was a speech therapist in Lewiston for 34 years. She was at Longley School. She had to deal with the portable classrooms, and I understand that is not the best way in the world to deal with things. But we do have people, and I'm going to speak as somebody that lives on a lake, and I'm not speaking for myself personally, because I'm not in the position at this point that I have to worry about it. But I know there are people that are out there. I had a neighbor, and through no fault of her own, she was in a home that was back in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. They built a home that was about $30,000, $35,000. They were forced to sell the home. It was a home that was now valued, for no fault of her own, at close to $500,000. And she couldn't afford the taxes on that. And this is something that's going to affect a lot of people that are in all the towns that are on fixed incomes. And in Poland, I think it's going to affect people more disproportionately because of some of the homes that are on the bodies of water. So, and when I said that before, I was talking about me personally, not me as a board member. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Stan. Aaron?
I guess the only comment I have is I really wish you wouldn't have said that if we don't vote this way, that we're not getting our middle school. I really wish that would never have brought that in.
I didn't say that you wouldn't get, I just said...
You did. No, you absolutely did. But
if I did, then I apologize.
Okay, because my other thing is, I joined this board, I think, 5 years ago. And the reason why was I was told either put up or shut up. And I'm here because the one goal that I've had for 3 years, for this last term, was to get the 3 towns to actually stop fighting. And that's been the most demeaning thing to everybody, to think your kids, whether they went to this school district or not, mine do, hers do, we all come from different towns. We have one mutual thing. I pay taxes in here, I'm a business owner in another town, and I pay taxes to another district. We all understand it. But I really wish it wouldn't have been put to us as an ultimatum, because that really does bother me. That where I chose to live was a choice, and I continue to make that choice. Where you live, that's your choice. You do whatever you want. But we're talking about 10% of 1.9 million, so you're looking at, what, as it was said, $35,000. We're going to hold up our kids' futures over that. It really bothers me. So I really, I appreciate your withdrawal of that, but it still was said.
Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to share publicly? Because we need to move on. Tina, let's be our last comment
Well,
here.
just another thing I think we should all consider is talking about the $35,000. Think about the cost to hire a state facilitator. So you're already going to knock that, that's going to change. Also think about the cost shift that which he shared with us, which was wonderful, but think about shifting $25,000 additional to Mechanic Falls, which is the poorest in our district. So, and then 9,000 something to Minot, which is the second poorest, and then, really helping to lower.
Are we going to discuss this another article?
We're going to
Things to consider, yeah.
We're going to vote on it during new business. So Norm hasn't had a chance to say something. I think he has something to
The
say, and
only
then we're going to move
thing
on.
we don't want to lose sight of that is, Steve and Stan both have pointed out, it's when, I'll say should we build the new school, then it's the way it is, then 2/3 of that falls on Poland for that bond. And I think this has got to be taken into consideration. It's not just the shifting $35,000 right now. It's with a bond out there of $6-7 million, we don't even know what it's going to cost yet. We haven't got that far. Then that's going to put a much larger percentage of that bond and a much larger burden on Poland. So I think we really need to think about that. Let's not just worry about the $35,000. Yeah, I'm concerned about that, but I'm really concerned about as we go down the road. So I think we need to-
2/3 of the population is
We're going to move on. We have a couple of things to do, and then we'll get to the section where we need to take some action on it. First, we need to act on our minutes, approve the regular meeting minutes of 10/17/16. We have a second? Second from Tina Loves. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There was one mistake in terms of members present. Melanie was listed twice. One of those people should have been Missy.
I didn't even notice.
I didn't notice it.
Were there any other?
Bonus attendance points.
That makes up for an absence.
Actually, he found out. Oh, good, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That was unanimous. The acceptance of the financial statement. We have a motion. We have a second. A second from Aaron. Motion and a second. And we'll ask Stacy for some discussion. Are there some things you'd like to call our attention to?
I'm glad to say I don't have anything new this month. The few lines that are overexpended, we talked about last month. So I have nothing in the general fund. The food service is in the black, $23,993 so far year to date. And adult ed is $9,461 in the black so far year to date.
Stacy, I noticed under the insurance lines for the schools that they all had like 15% left. Is that because our insurance was less than what we thought it might be?
Yes, I always project a 10% increase because over the years I've found it's been around 10 to 12. So the building insurance is paid up. as we put new buses online, we will continue to see the transportation insurance line go in the red.
Okay, but the ones in terms of schools, that should be left at the end of the year then?
Yes.
Good. Anybody else have any questions on the financial statement? Okay, we
Just
have...
a really quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Food service, in our handout, is that different with what we had for owed amounts?
Yes, because that handout does not show the outstanding subsidy. The claim is always done the 10th of the month following the month, and so we have an accounts receivable of $45,765 that'll be coming in for September, for October, for the food service program.
So the 29,000 that it looks like is owed is really not owed because we're getting 45.
Are you talking about the financial that shows? Yes, that 45,000 is not showing on the financial.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the financial statement? And that was unanimous. So we can move on to new business, and the first thing on the new business is the RSU cost share review. So our motion would either be to support the continuation of the current cost share formula or to move forward with the formal committee process as defined in the reorganization
So
plan.
move on the first one.
Which would be to support
Accept it as is.
the continuation of the current cost share formula. Do we have a second? Second from Julie?
I would make a motion to table it for a month, to have some time to reflect upon it.
We gotta act on my motion first.
You gotta act on this.
And can we ask, can we?
So we
any
have a
discussion?
motion and a second. Do we have some discussion then?
I would ask that we actually reflect on it for about a month before, because this is obviously a major decision. I think we should take some time to think about it first.
I'll withdraw my motion if that's what people,
And what's the time frame? So again, this is sort of off year. So typically, the 2-year would be next year. So I'm just trying to be clear on the time frame. So if we forego it right now, do we then do we get back on schedule, so it would actually be next year we would look at it again? Or is that like now it's 2 years from now?
2 years from now.
3 years.
So basically it says you're gonna look at it 5 years, and then you're gonna look at it every 2 years after that. So,
But
So we're gonna look at this again next year.
yeah, I would, and again, our legal counsel said, looking at it means you can just say, we feel it's working well, there doesn't even have to be a vote, it's just that you discuss it. So last year actually counts as a review, because we discussed it and decided to leave as is. It's certainly, there is no time limit, so if the board wanted to take 5 months to consider this, you could. You do have a request before you to review it, so, there is no time limit put in place in the cost sharing, or the reorganization plan.
Okay, Missy?
I think we ought to do it. And not because I want to do it.
You mean in terms of voting tonight?
No, in terms of actually reviewing it. Because I think if all 3 townspeople all got together, the 9 people, it's not 8 Poland people and 1, everybody else. It's all 3 towns. And I think it's, Poland is a huge area and a huge voting area. And I don't like that the middle school got brought into it, but I think it's absolutely going to affect it. And if we want...
so you go by threat.
I don't like the threat, but it's also true. I mean, it's a threat that would get carried through. I mean, it absolutely would get carried through. They voted down our, a budget recently. The whole Poland, voted it down. So I think we should do it. I mean, I don't like us having to pay the $1,600. If we could get the people that requested us to do it to pay a portion of it, I would prefer that. But I think most of them left, so I don't know. If you could pay a portion of the $1,600?
The only point I would make is we pay 67%.
Okay, Jack, something he wanted to...
I mean, it's unbudgeted money that we have that...
I agree. I mean, I think that we really need to consider it. I don't think we can take an action tonight and just do it, because I think it's been put out there that right now, I think this is going to be hanging on us. I don't think we really have much of a choice.
Annette?
Who has the decision on who gets on this board? I understand one person, I don't think...
You mean the committee? The towns pick their 2, and then we would come
So
to
the
some
town picks
determination on which.
They pick two.
Two community members
Oh, I
of their
think it-
choice.
I think that's the way
Or
it
could it
would
be their,
work.
is it their board members?
Um,
Is it?
This, I'll read the language, I'll read the language again.
Every town.
It says that, right here, it says,
Yeah, right, so like,
each member municipality must be represented at the meeting or meetings by two representatives chosen at large by its municipal officers, and one member of the regional school unit board chosen by the municipality's municipal officers.
So they pick out one of our school board members to be on it?
So you're all, right, you're your five elected officials. So this is what you need to think about. You've been elected by your towns to represent. The cost sharing formula says you make a decision about whether this gets reviewed or it doesn't. And so you're going to make that vote, and then you're going to, if you decide to have it reviewed, it's going to be reviewed by a 9-person panel. So weighted votes here, not weighted votes on that next committee.
Or if we choose not to review it, they can still choose to go through the process of the petition. Julie?
It sounds like what you
Julie?
just said is that the municipality chooses the school board member to be on it. So we don't get to say, I want to be on
I
it.
thought it was us, but it
It's
sounds like it's
the-
not.
Oh.
So,
Changes it a little bit.
Steve?
9-member committee gets set down. They can do anything they want with that formula. They can go 100% student count, 100% valuation, or however they want it. People think about that.
So they have to bring it back for approval.
well, it has to go to the town to vote on. So
So that's gonna
if you
cost
have-
money, too.
It does. It is a costly decision, and I think you have to decide, again, when we talked to the administrators, my point was, because it was brought up about the middle school, and my point is, that's a separate item. And our job is, if we get a middle school, is to sell the middle school to our communities, and they vote to support it or they don't. We continue to educate our children the very best we can, no matter what that vote is. But it can't be entangled, it shouldn't be entangled in this decision. You should make your decision based on what you believe is the right and fair thing to do. And again, that may be part of your decision because you are concerned about that future piece, but it is your job to make the first determination. Ed?
I think after thinking about it, I think I agree with Missy. I think we should just, I would vote to, in panel, the committee that we discussed, it hasn't been reviewed before. It's going to involve all 3 towns, all different people from 3 towns. I'm confident that these people, whoever they are, which will be 3 of us on it, can come up with something what's fair, which may be leave things the way they are. I get a feeling that the people, the town of Poland, or I'm assuming it's just Poland, who has to get the 10% of the last election? It's Poland or the 3 communities, or?
So it's all 3 communities together.
10%?
What was 10%? That's the number of petitions.
10% of their towns or 10% total?
10% of the voters from the gubernatorial. And that only happens if you decide not to do it, and they want to push it
Right,
anyway.
so I don't think that's very onerous for them to do, and so let's just save the trouble. I mean, I think that's going to happen anyway, so why don't we just do it? We've never done it before. I guess I'm not afraid of the outcome. I think we got some smart people in these towns.
That's what I was thinking too, and really, I mean, if we're afraid that Poland's gonna go with whatever number, we've got 6 people from the other 2 towns, I mean, so it would be all
And, you know, there's ideas out there, people have ideas, you know, who knows?
But isn't the criteria isn't the criteria, if we look back to what that states, isn't it that we compare it to 2009 and 2010? So we as a board have to consider that information to decide whether it's valuable for us to move forward and taking, I think we need to remove the middle school piece of it.
Yeah, but that's
because I
not
think
letting-
people are letting that, but I think people are letting that influence them, and I don't think that's two separate issues. We have to look at 2009-10, compare it to this year, we have the numbers. Is there anything significantly different between the two that would warrant us to say, yeah, this is really not fair and equitable, and we really need to revise this?
Aaron?
Couldn't have said it any better. Had the middle school not been brought up, which way would you vote? That's the only question on the table right now, because we're asked to go against the numbers that were already provided.
That's right.
Has nothing to do with future voting, has nothing to do with future plans, because we don't even know if we're doing this yet or not.
Right.
But the threat was out there that if we do proceed, unless we do this, we're not getting our way. So take that out of the equation, separate your mind completely, you have information, that's what you should be going off of.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and the motion was to support continuation of the current cost share formula. All those in favor? Okay, do we probably need
Yeah,
to...
I'm gonna just do
You
it.
can keep your hands up, because we're gonna need to...
I'm trying to find my paper, I got a pile now. It's in here. Oh, here we go.
I know it.
So just read the names to me and I'll check them.
Steve,
We got Steve,
Annette, Melanie,
Melanie is from where? Melanie's from Poland, I'm lost. Okay, here's Melanie, yeah.
Julie,
Julie's
Put our hands down
from
after you say our name?
We say your name for Catherine.
What are the rules?
Mary,
Remember?
Tina,
Gina,
I'm in pain.
yes,
I can see that.
Jen,
okay, and Aaron is Mechanic Falls. Okay, so.
okay. All those opposed? We'll assume it's everybody else, but,
Yes, you can stay.
Missy?
I'm gonna do that while I look at my calculator.
I have a question. If I'm voting no,
We can do it or an abstention, that's the
I
only.
want to speak to abstention
Should
first,
be,
being on
yeah.
the policy committee.
Yes.
If somebody plans to abstain, please let me know, I wanted to discuss it with you. Are you abstaining?
Leonard?
well, I'm not sure. I'm of the opinion of Leonard and Jack that. So you would vote no?
You would
So
vote
vote
against.
no.
Got it.
It's
I just want to think, is it, I'm thinking about it.
Okay, we got you. Now we're just gonna add it up.
Are you doing that with modern math or math our way?
We're doing common.
Oh, we're doing it money math, not Poland math, no, where else at?
We all, everybody.
She's calculating it now, because it's weighted.
So it was 559 votes. Passes was 559 votes.
Passes with 500.
559.
59.
And what is the number for passing?
502.5.
So it's 559 to,
Well, that's 5502 is the quorum.
So we do not revisit it this year, we go at it next year. Is that the moving?
Oh, yes.
2 years.
Well, unless they get the,
Yeah.
Unless, but it's on them to do this, but,
right.
so are we, the way we read it earlier, though, was 5 years and then 2 years after, or a year earlier. So do we pick it up next year, or are we doing
I'll ask
2 years
legal
from today?
counsel.
As long as we can get a follow-up.
So we can move on, and
It was 559 to 446, so the majority points go to the yes.
Yes, on my motion, right?
Yes, on your motion.
so we're moving on to approve our wood chip bids, and those were in our packets. There are 2 bids for Cousino Forest Products out of East Wilton and Thompson Enterprises out of South China. John?
You covered it. I just have a question about it.
Yes.
On the first one, it says, exceptions taken, it says, see attached proposal. There wasn't one. But on the second one was $2 more, and it said no exceptions taken, so.
When he called and asked about the attached proposal, it was about the question, he had a question about the waiver, what the requirement for the waiver. He didn't understand, the 10% over and under.
Okay.
But he never really attached anything.
Okay.
So like.
Okay, I was just wondering what that was when I
So,
saw it.
John, do you have a recommendation for us?
Yeah, we've been doing business with Thompson Enterprises. However, Cusino is the lowest bidder by $2 per ton. We checked with the references. They're doing business with Colby College and some other school districts, and they haven't had any issues with them, so our recommendation is to go with Cusino.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept, and then I have a couple questions.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second from Norm? We have a motion and a second, discussion, Steve?
Is it, are we burning dry chips?
No, there's.
Not the green stuff right out of the woods?
Right, yeah, but they're not kiln dried.
Right,
There's a
right.
certain amount of
Right.
moisture content in them, yes.
And what did we pay last year per ton?
$60 per ton.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Short, sweet.
No one opposed?
Good night, John.
On the table today were, again, our RSU school board goals, of which we talked about last time, and based on a suggestion during that discussion, the only change is the last activity on that front page. And if you'll remember, we had 3 goals. One was to improve communication and engagement with key constituents, students, staff, administration, and community, and there were no suggested changes under the activities. Under effective board structure and function, our goal was to improve RSU 16 school board performance by developing common understanding of the board culture and the work of the board. And the activity that's listed is a new one, based on our discussion last time, to review and update our board norms to address board concerns that were expressed around communication within the board, and for us to do that by February 2017. And those discussions would start with the Educational Policy Committee. Our third goal, and there were no changes in the activities there, was by October 2017, the RSU 16 board will identify actions and next step for the upcoming year to ensure that the strategic plan continues to be a strategic document that's forward-thinking and addresses the RSU 16 mission and vision. So the only change was that one activity that I added. The other was what we reviewed last month. So we have a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve these as our board goals. We have a second? A second from Annette. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. And we have teacher resignation to approve, and there was a letter within our packet. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
By Steve, a second? Second by Norm. Any discussion? Diana?
I guess it's sort of a double question. Is this normal? And then the second thing is, if the person, I feel like, I'm not sure why the board votes on approving employee hires and employee resignations when we don't actually interview the employee. We have no say in the hiring process. I'm just not sure of my role here, because if a teacher wants to resign,
We probably should let them.
it's a pretty big deal for them.
And Tina can address it. It is part of the role of the superintendent and the board and how we work together,
So as far as the hiring goes, the hiring process is a 3-step process. So we do the interviewing, and you assume that the experts in the field are interviewing and selecting the best candidate, and then we make a nomination, we being me, make a nomination to you. So it's gone through a team at the school with a second interview through me before a recommendation comes to you. certainly you only know the basics about that person. And it is a, there's no sound transmitting on that.
Oh, nice.
Yes. That's too bad, an important meeting, and the people at home didn't hear it. So, so it is required that you go through the hire, you don't actually hire, you approve my nomination, and then I do the employee, I hire. So the first part is a three-step process. I recommend, you approve, I hire. So you're not essentially hiring. If you approve and I don't actually hire, it's done. It can stop at anywhere along the line. What this actually does is if there's an employee that I'm recommending that somebody in the community knows something about that maybe hasn't come out, you have a say and could stand up and say, we're not putting that person's not getting beyond the board. And occasionally there's controversial hire that the board may say, this person is known and we have some issues with them. That doesn't usually happen. I've never been in a district where somebody did, go beyond the board. When it comes to resignations, you don't need to accept resignations. I asked legal counsel at the conference recently because they were talking about a similar issue, and they said, no need for the board to approve resignations. Somebody has resigned, and that person's not going to be here, so it doesn't matter whether you approve it or not. It's something that Mike Wilhelm started when he was here, and I've just continued doing it. So if you'd like it just to be an announcement, that's fine, and there's no legal requirements for you to approve any resignation.
I think the other part of her question is this usual? It's very unusual. And we don't usually have staff that will resign at this time of year.
So we can't talk about staffing issues without, we can't talk about any staffing issues without going into an executive session. It's probably not here near there because.
I mean, with regard to a plan for the school that is impacted by the resigning, is that a discussion that we?
Can you say that again?
I don't
The
want to
plan
talk about
for
the
filling this
individual
position.
person.
Right.
I'm
Is your-
concerned about the school that is impacted by the loss of a teacher mid-year.
So they have a 60-day notice clause. The person gave the 60-day notice. That's they've met their legal obligation with us. And if we do have calls out to the University of Farmington, they have some graduates coming through in January. They'll be finishing their program in December. They are handing out the information to their graduates, and we are hopeful to get a rock star from their new graduates for that program. And we all, it's like anything else. There unexpected things happen occasionally. I've been in education for, I don't know how long, almost 30 years, and I've never known somebody resign during the year unless there was an administrative problem that kind of encouraged that resignation. So we do the best we can with the unexpected, and I'm confident that, we'll handle this as we would with any other open or position. If somebody were out for the year for medical leave, it would be the same process.
Julie?
So does the discussion of we're only going to need one sixth grade teacher next year need to be discussed other time, not discussed at all?
Well,
Acknowledged?
every year when we do our budget planning, we do an enrollment projection for how many staff we need. But you got to remember, this one class has been moving up every year, so we're going to need 2 for the class below it that now has 1. So there will still be the same number of teachers. We won't be losing a teacher at the end of this year. I mean, unless there's something unusual with enrollment. But we're not going to need the position the position will be at the end of the year, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
And because we have a motion and a second, we will vote on this, but I don't see any concern about us having to continue to vote on resignations, so.
Yeah, just informational.
Yeah, so we will vote on this one. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So that was unanimous. We have been asked to approve a field trip to Rochester, New Hampshire for boys hockey. If you'll remember, our hockey team is a cooperative team, and they will be transported by Levitt. It's a cooperative team between Brighton, Gloucester, Levitt, Oak Hill, and Poland. So do we have a motion? A motion from Julie and seconded by Norm. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous? So we have two policies, one of which we looked at last month, got a little confused, so we'll have Tina explain that to us this time.
Are you sure you dare? And Carrie's here, she'll help us if we have problems. Yeah, so I think we're probably okay this time around. What happened last time is I had the original and a revised, and when I showed Lauren that I was confused, she said, what we found out is she actually had them reversed. So the original had the revised name on it, and it just got us all confused. But the big change here, again, isn't big. It's just that we are going from laptops, from iPads to laptops. And also, when it says, and Sean's right there, but when it says that they read and agreed to the technology, the student technology device and internet use policy, and also the student technology device and internet use rule. The difference is in the past, that because of the iPads, they had a parent and parent-student training, and they also had a video that they watched. So that language was in the old one, that they had to watch the video. That's no longer the case. Laptops are a lot less, there are a lot less concerns about, the use of the laptops. So basically, they're just making sure kids and parents have read the two policies. And Sean, do I have that all right?
Yes, I will add that we did offer a parent night for 7th grade parents, and we did have a fairly good attendance to that. And I am posting, I've asked the webmaster to post our slideshow from that online so that parents who were not able to attend are able to view that. And I certainly meet with any parents around technology that have any interest in doing so as well.
Okay, thanks. So do we have a motion? Motion, seconded by Jack. Steve?
I have one question. Where does it say, number 2 ensures that the cost for repairs and damage due to negligence never costs the families more than $100. There can be a lot more damage than $100. And why this happened to glare at me when I read it. I know it's been our policy for a long time, but in another school district, quite a ways away from here, there was a student that damaged a machine that cost $400 to repair. And it was just because the kid wanted to take it apart and see what he could do with it, basically is what it is. So, what do you do in a situation like that? Are we going to absorb if we have a kid that decides he wants to take his laptop apart to see if he can
So
put it back together again?
certainly if there's blatant, we've had kids get angry and, throw a laptop or a computer or something like that. And our administrators work hard and closely with Linda to make sure that there is appropriate use. What this $30 fee does is it gets a pool of money, so it's kind of like we're self-insuring. It's not insurance, but it's helping us absorb the cost. And yes, I'm assuming, Sean, there's a time when they don't get another computer back if there's, if they haven't paid the fee to fix the first one, or if there's ongoing problems. There are times when kids aren't allowed to have laptops. Am I correct on that, or iPads?
Yes.
So, yeah, this is a starting point, and the family still does contribute, the $100, but there is buffer money because everybody contributes to kind of ensure that if their child does something, neglectful, or, sometimes they leave it in their backpack and somebody steps on it, that it's not going to cost them more than $1,000, $100.
Yeah, I was around when we first developed this policy anyway, years ago. And I think the only reason I bring it up and even ask is, do we have enough money in the pool for
Yes.
whatever we've done?
This is working well for us.
Just so we don't,
Yes.
I certainly don't want to put more burden on the parents for something like that, but as long as, I don't want to cover it either. It's just some kid feels like leaving it out in the rain.
Yes, I believe, and Sean may know more, but I believe that the money that we collect has covered our expenses, and this hasn't been paid for by the RSU. It's covered by the money that's collected as the use fee.
So I just want to clarify, so at the very beginning, are they being asked then to do the IJ and DB student technology and device and internet use policy? In addition, they're also doing the B/R student technology devices and internet user rules? So each parent has to do all of those, or?
Yes, I sent home copies of both of those policies attached to this document.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. I'll send that around. And we have a second policy, the Title I Parent, Family, Legal Guardian Engagement Policy. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Missy. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
The changes in this were very minor as well. We had Bruce Whittier Middle School listed as a Title I school. It is not a Title I school, so that's taken off. And then when we went through the process with MSMA to see if there's any other updates that we need to have, laws changed since we went through it, they said no. But they did change the language from parent involvement to parent and family engagement. So minor changes, and all of it is still within the law, so no other changes recommended.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous? Around. Okay, as we move into our A-team reports, we have Carrie's State of the School report, and I would suggest that we wait till next month, because those are important presentations that we don't want to hurry through. So if that works for you, Carrie, we'll do that next month.
December.
Yeah, I think that, that way we can give it the time that it deserves. So, looking at A-team reports, if you'll notice, Tina had also added in, it was left on the table today, the superintendent's report, which she's going to also provide for us monthly. We also had the other administrative reports. Any comments or questions? I had a couple. I wanted to say congratulations to Special Ed for meeting the requirement designation, as that's the top category. And also wanted to say congratulations to Adult Education as being identified as in the top performing category for adult ed programs, one of 13 that got top category in 3 areas. So again, supports our adult ed program. And I wanted to thank Amy for her definitions and explanations throughout. Around things like standards and essential questions and enduring understandings. Those are things that we talk about, and it was good to see those definitions within yours. I wanted to comment on the fact that our 6th graders have had their experience at the ecology school, which I only heard good things about, and I wanted to thank our administrators who spent time there, and our teachers. That's really one of those commitments that's beyond, it's a residential program and requires a lot of our staff, so I'd like to recognize that. And I wanted to recognize Carrie and Sean for the collaborative work on the 7-12 curriculum and between the middle school and the high school, and how important that is, that not be done in isolation. And and that we're doing those two things together. And I noticed there were lots of events to bring families and communities into school. There were conferences, there were family breakfasts, book fairs, benefit suppers, Veterans Day events, PTO events, and upcoming Grandparents' Day. So lots of ways that you're inviting our community and our parents into school. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Anybody else have anything? Diane?
I just had one quick question, which I think it's great. I noticed that in the middle school, they're still doing the NWEA test, which is pretty much the only consistent test. But now, are we still doing it there? I thought we voted that we weren't doing that test anymore. Or are we still doing it in the elementary schools?
The board didn't vote on it, it's just an administrative decision to use it, and we do not use it K-6, but because at the middle school, when we were doing the assessments, we would only have information on our 7th graders, not our 7th and 8th graders, because of the way the state testing was set up. So Sean asked when we stopped using it to keep it at the middle school so we have the data for progress monitoring. He is currently looking at another test other than NWEA, but we have been using that all along at the middle school and the middle school opening.
Couldn't we keep it at the elementary school since it's the only consistent, then they would have the information to build when they got to the middle school?
We certainly could do that. It costs around $16,000 for us to give that test, and what we were finding is people were feeling like kids were over-tested, and we weren't using the data well. So we give the test in October, and then we were giving the kneecap in October, and then we were giving, you know what I mean, we were giving the test in January, because you're supposed to do it 3 times a year, or you can, to do progress monitoring, and then we were doing the science test in March, and then, you know, it just was a lot of testing. We were doing the Fontes Pinel in the spring, and we were doing the Fontes Pinel in the fall. And my requirement of the administrators was, if we're paying $16,000 and we're testing kids 3 times, we need to show how we're using this data to put our student, to impact our instruction. And we didn't have what I felt was a consistent way to show that we were doing that. So I basically said, until we are ready to do that and do it well, we're not going to spend $16,000 and do more testing. The other piece of this is we're getting the same evidence that we were getting from the state test. So if it said we were doing well on the geometry standards, the state test said we were doing well on the geometry standards. So it just comes back to, do we really want to do more outside testing, or do we want teachers to be assessing within the midst of their classroom and their instruction and have it be more meaningful? And that's my philosophy, is that we should be having assessments that are done within the classroom. Certainly, if the administrative team says they need the data to provide services for students and to know whether students are achieving the standards, I would be, although it's not based on our standards, it's a national test. And it's, the other problem with it, it's on a bell curve. So there's a little, you know, the average score is based on how everybody else in the country does on that same test. So it's not really, doesn't accomplish quite the same thing as our state test does. But there are some good things about it, not opposed to it, just expect that it's used properly if we do it and if we're spending the money.
And the other question? Yep, go ahead, Norm.
You did mention the ecology school, and I think for some of the new members that may or may not know, that's pretty much funded by Poland Spring.
Not exactly.
Not anymore.
Not any
Not as
district.
much as it was.
Yes.
But,
It's about a third.
Yeah.
about a third. And
Exactly. Ferry
Yeah, one
Beach
time.
actually gives us around about 10,000. Poland Springs gives us about 12,000, and then the school board actually is picking up the additional cost, which I think is
So the PTOs
close
contribute
to
quite a bit.
about 10,000 as well. So, but Poland Springs has donated a lot to that over the years.
originally, they paid for the whole thing when it was just one
Right.
town.
And actually, when the 3 towns got together, they
They did
did,
for a
but then
few
they
years,
decided that there were some other projects that they wanted to donate to. Moving on to the report of student representatives, and we're pleased that both Sarah and Jordan are here tonight. So if you guys would like to tell us what's going on, and again, I want to say, if there are things that we're talking about here that you guys have an opinion on and could provide feedback, or we're always looking for that, so don't be shy about it.
Well, basically, all we're doing right now is we have our first night meeting tomorrow from 2:30 to 4. So we're all gonna meet and talk about potential new policy suggestions and stuff we got from Vision Keepers. And then we're working towards our Holiday Spirit Week coming up. So
What kind of things might happen during Holiday Spirit Week?
usually there's a pep rally at the end of the week, and then we have dress-up days and stuff like that. We have a penny war that goes on too.
That usually just before Christmas vacation?
A what war? A penny war. So like each class has a container and then you put pennies in to bring up, but then you can put in like paper money or silver.
And that brings it down.
Yeah. So, and then usually it gets donated to a charity. So.
And who who chooses the charity?
SRB does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we'll be interested when you do that, who you decide to give it to. Thank you. And our subcommittee reports, operations. Do mine. So, I don't know, John, did he leave?
He left. Yes, we were
And I don't know that there's, oh, okay, oh, that's right. There was really, we talked about the garage bay update, we talked about that tonight. Application for construction, John reported that there are construction applications available. We talked about it and said the direction from the board was to look at Minot as the priority, Elm Street as priority 2, and that we would do 2 applications with the intent that it may be a joint project should one of them be approved. But also the recognition that, yeah, we put in the application realizing that it is down the road many, many years. But it doesn't hurt to put in an application. And then the rest were strategic plan revisions, and we did have our food service person there who helped us with come up with some goals and activities there, and Tom was also there, so both of them helped with the strategic plan. And personnel and finance, Leonard.
So we sat in on that, we talked about some changes to the strategic plan, some projects we discussed in central office, making sure there was positions covered. And then we spent pretty much the lion's share of the rest of the meeting talking about the RC-60 reorganization, talking about the numbers that we covered earlier today in regards to how the funding formula work. And we postponed the website grades and whatnot until the next meeting.
And thank you, we did work a little bit at that meeting on this worksheet, and thank you, Leonard, for going over that. I think it was a really easy way to understand something that's very, very complicated. So thanks for doing that, you and Tina. All right, educational policy.
All right, so Tina filled us in on a discussion that she had with the Director of Vision Studies from Bates to see if there was any interest in, or ability as well, to take on some Chinese students. Apparently, there's been conversations with other schools to see what capacity there is for it, and we thought it was certainly warranted coming to the full board and having further discussion about it, because obviously it would bring in funding because they are paid for. So I'm assuming we'll be hearing more about that to see if that progresses. And we reviewed policy KBF, which you've already seen, the parent engagement, recommended that go for first and final. Committee also discussed change to the puberty education. Previously, when it was first discussed, it was with a meeting for the parents. So parents would have the ability to have an evening meeting, hear what was going to be talked about, voice any questions. They really haven't been attended. I think we had discussion that 2 parents had attended. So really, we were okay with the change of eliminating the evening meeting, but it doesn't mean that there won't be any option for parents to speak with the teachers and get information, anything that they want to on that. So, and the last thing that we did was work on the updates to Section A of the strategic plan.
And I'll just want to give an update about the Chinese tuition students, because that would have been on an agenda item this month, except that I spoke with Rick Colpitts from Oxford Hills. They also met with Li Ping, and one of the, they already have a sister school in China, so they've gone through a lot of the process already. And she has only worked with Hebron and St. Dom's private schools, and the process is different for them. They have a much quicker, easier way to get approval to be a receiving school. And so what Rick Colpitts shared with me is it would take longer, it will take a while for us to get approval to do the visas and go through that process. So we won't be able to start next year. He said there's no way you could actually get through the process and have it be in enough time for them to prepare for the transition here. But the high school's excited about it, and I know the Ed Committee was excited about the process, and we certainly want to go forward and work through the process depending on, I've got more to learn, and I know that Li Ping, according to Mr. Colpitts, was going back to do more research on public schools and how that is different.
Now, they're part of the exchange, kind of an exchange student program.
It would be slightly different than that. They're not asking for our families to host them like an exchange program is. They're actually going to house them and transport them as an entity. They want to bring a significant number of them, and so we would just be tuitioning them into our school. We wouldn't be.
So it'd be a little bit different than what's going on at the private schools right now.
Yes.
We have space.
Yes. What Carrie felt, they had initially said 20, and Carrie said she thinks we probably could accommodate maybe 10 to grade. Yeah, 10 to 12, because what the goal was initially, and this is also part of the new information, was what Li Ping does is they bring them in for 4 years of school, so they start as freshmen and they stay for 4 years, and then they go to college here, and then they go back to China. But the state law doesn't allow that in public education. According to Mr. Colpitts, they only can stay for 1 year. So that totally changes the dynamics of, the process and how that would be. So it might be that we're getting, a certain amount for the first year, but the next year would be a whole new different group of students. So I don't know if that works, if that's going to work as well. So we will be in conversation with Li Ping when the details are figured out, and then I will be in conversation with Carrie about how that would look at the high school. But Carrie and I have certainly had some conversations about what the implications would be at the high school, and we all think it would be a great idea to have some diversity at our school, and to bring in some students from outside of our
They teach Chinese, so we would have.
Maybe. You never know.
And the next report was the middle school building committee, and I would just encourage you to read through those, because we do have a pretty solid now floor plan and outside plan. So the next steps as we left that were that they were going to continue to refine those plans. We asked them to come the next time with some estimates, and they're also going to be scheduling a meeting with the police department and the fire department to talk about the design and suggestions and impact. And then election day at the teacher conference had to have some information available. And I'd like to thank Melanie for standing in at Poland, but John did get the outside view of what that edition would look like, and it was displayed at each of the polling places. So that was great. And our next meeting on that is November 29th.
Where are the meetings going? Where are the meetings going?
The meetings are here. Yep.
Here?
No, they were, it was here the last time, because but they've been at Elm Street in the conference room, but they were here last time.
When are our next subcommittee meetings?
Our next committee meetings are the All right, that's right, it is the 28th.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, report of the school board chair. You'll notice that our attendance chart was in there. One of the suggestions that we had was that we put an asterisk or a star next to ones that were excused or called in, and we can't probably go back and do that, but we will do that moving forward, because there are definitely times when you can't be here. And we would ask that you would call in, and we will indicate that on that. Strategic plan revisions, basically all I wanted to say was they are proceeding at the committee meetings. I will ask probably the governance, the Ed Policy Committee to do the governance section. It's our goal that we have those done by January. And one of the suggestions that Tina heard at the conference that we were at recently was that some people have posters made up of them and have them displayed in places where people gather in each of the schools, and that might be a possibility to get that kind of out there and more visible to our communities and our public, and also to have it on the website again as soon as it's done. Superintendent Evaluation Committee, if you'll remember, one of our goals was to review and update that process and that tool this year. So if we're going to have that ready for April, when we're going to need it, we need to start doing it now. So I'm looking for 2 or 3 people that might be willing to get together with me and work on the revision of that.
Is that the one I do?
That is, and I was hoping that hand was Julie did it with me. Well, I saw it. Doesn't mean if you were just asking a question. So Julie will help you with that. How about Jack?
Yeah, sure.
And Missy's hiding over there in the bookshelf, but would Missy help me with that again? Sure. All right, so good. Julie, Missy, and Jack. And Tina's going to be part of that too, so we can come up with what we think is a process that maybe is, probably won't change a lot, but we're hoping the tool will change so that it's kind of more workable. The MSMA conference, which I went to on October 27th and 28th, Tina and I tried to attend sessions that we felt directly related to our strategic plan, to our goals, and we've had opportunities to attend lots of sessions that were led with lawyers with expertise in school law, so it was sort of like you're getting some free legal advice, and we weren't shy about asking questions. There was an article that was part of those, which was called Running a Tight Ship, and it was about school board meetings, so that addressed our questions around quorum, some of them around executive session and public participation. There was an article in one of them that talked about how Maine school boards are really unique, and it talked about our role, which we've talked about some. And this was one of the quotes that I pulled from it. It says, "School boards are chosen by voters, but its primary duty is to oversee public education in the manner prescribed by state law, and not solely to carry out the actual or perceived will of the local voters." It talked about the strong link that our role has to school law, that it's, we're chosen to represent, but we also, it's making sure that we're upholding school law and providing the best for our kids in terms of education.
Can I speak to that?
Yep.
I think that's a really tough one
It
for
is.
school board members, but also the community to understand that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we get that to the voters and the community, but...
Well, and maybe an article in one of our newsletters that, I think and what I will do is, over the next couple months, each month, put maybe some of that information that you can look at ahead of time before our meeting, so we don't need to spend time in a meeting. But I think there were some pieces in that probably Tina and I can work together to put into a newsletter, even as a question and answer kind of format.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I really think a lot of people feel like that you're there to hear what the community members want and to go and speak or act on their behalf. And really, the lawyers were saying that it's, or the sessions, in the session they were saying that you have to remember, even if it's 30 or 40 or 50 people that are coming to you about a topic, it's only 30 or 40 or 50. And it may seem like a lot because this topic they're calling you on is important to those 30, but when you consider there's 3,000 people out there or 7,000 people out there, you can't react on a small segment of your population. It's hard, though, if you're getting 20 or even 10 calls. I've heard people say, I've gotten so many calls, and it's hard to keep in perspective how many people are really out there.
So we also went to one on special education rulings, and then there were some changes in pre-K law, so we went to that one, and I think we're in pretty good shape for that. I mean, we're pretty much doing and have the kind of program that they're changing the laws to prescribe, so I think we're all set there. But I will share some of those articles or pieces so that you can read those outside of the meeting. And I hope each month that you're reading these. A couple of the ones that I saw this month, the 10 rules for boosting community trust. That addresses some of what you talked about tonight, Annette, and it is part of our goal, and it's been an ongoing goal for us, and definitely one that we need to keep working on.
I like an abused spouse. You can't escape, and you just keep going back, and you stay for financial reasons. It's not a cheap hotel.
I bit my tongue earlier. No, I've been here for 26 years and we haven't got along yet.
We are going to.
Yeah, I bet
And on the other side of that, it was talked about school board accountability. Does your board measure up? And I think pretty much we do. But I think it is good to see, what a good board member, a good board looks like. And then this one, it was 8 rules for avoiding board meeting conflict. So, each one of them, I've found some things that I think directly address goals that we're working on.
Steve, it's improving. I remember Union 29 meeting lasted until midnight.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, you remember those?
So I know one postage stamp.
We're going to go to the report of the superintendent.
And before I start on mine, one of the things I do want to say is these are, like national publications, and occasionally they do have advice in here or things in here that violate our policy. So, or may not even fit with the way we do business. So I just want to say that because it does talk about, in this bottom section about commenting on school issues, it talks about talking to reporters.
Yeah.
And we have the policy be that the superintendent or the board chairs are the only ones who speak to reporters. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think the information is good and there's usually not too much that might interfere with our policies, but just know that they could.
Yep.
So I just have 2 things. My report, I just wanted to comment a little bit on this for those of you who weren't here last time, and I think I forgot to bring it up last time and sent it to you after, or comments to you after. One of the things that I thought I would do is putting just a little bit of my work in paper as well, because when I do my reports, oftentimes it's at the end of the day, end of the meeting, and I feel rushed, so I'll skip a whole bunch of things that are actually on my list that I want to talk about. And this, I know there's goals for me to be in the schools, there's goals for me to do community, events, and then also there's the work that I do, just like what's dominating my time this month. So I'm just doing bullets. It's not, all encompassing, but I thought it would give you something to walk away with. And if you keep them over the months, when it gets time to do my evaluation, you can go, oh, we did hear a little bit about, here are some of the town meetings she's done, here's some of the state events she's at, here's some of the, the curriculum work they're doing.
And I think a good example is the one she has on here, town managers meeting. Tina and I did meet with them and go over the same information that was shared tonight in terms of the cost share formula. And one that couldn't be there, Tina met with individually. So I think that those kinds of meetings are, even though they're time-consuming, they're helpful.
And the only other thing I had on here was the superintendent's goals. We still don't have our school data, so I'm going to hold off one more month, and hopefully we'll have it next month. The administrative team is doing the same thing. We're working on the goals that we can do without our assessment data. It's been difficult because typically you have your assessment data in July, and you can make your building and your district goals based on what we know our student achievement says we need to work on, and we haven't been able to do that because the state has the new tests and they're getting their results out our late. So we were supposed to have them November 1, but only science came out. So we will be analyzing our science data tomorrow at the administrative team, and we will have some updates, hopefully for reading and writing by the time we meet again. And I also will be triangulating my goals off from the board goals, of course, because your goals are my goals and vice versa. So we'll have some finalized goals. Certainly, we're already working on the things we've always been working on, as you saw with the site visits and the strategic plan work and the communications with the towns. Those are all representative of the work we're doing. So negotiations, again, are the big thing that's dominating time. We have some people on this board, Jen, Jack, and Leonard, and Diane are all on that committee, and we are all contributing a lot of time to that process. So I thank them for that commitment. There are long ways to go still, but we're making progress every week.
Do you want to go over?
Oh, yes, I
support
always
staff?
forget that. So support staff, we have Penny Dion, who we hired as a bus monitor, Maurice Burgess, who's going to be an Ed Tech 3 at PRHS. We have varsity baseball coach, Charles Cray. We have a resignation, that's Heather Libby, an Ed Tech. She has gotten a teaching job in SAD 52, so she's moving from an Ed Tech to a special ed teacher. So congratulations to her. And then we had just the handouts that Mary spoke to.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second?